Here we go. You ready? What's up, everybody? My name is Sparkles McGlitterbuns, aka Bane Shaheen, and I'm here to help you write better stories. And not just better stories, but stories that mean something. Because stories aren't just stories, right? You're here because you want to be, or are, a storyteller. Someone who understands that a story can help change someone's mind, help them see something in a new way, and generally help each other understand what it means to be human. So hopefully what I'm going to do here is start with the basics and then work up to how you can do things like fight Nazis with storytelling. Because believe me, you and the stories that you tell are way more important than even you think. Plus, we're going to have fun with it. Because let's be honest, there's no reason we can't have fun and fight fascism with stories at the same time. So here are some vaguely impressive What do you mean we can't say? Here's some vaguely impressive stuff about me that might convince you that I know what I'm talking about. For one thing, I literally wrote the book on this. It's called Narrative Engineering, and it's available right now on Amazon.com. Narrative engineering basically means designing and building stories. Admittedly, it's a book that is for readers who are 18 plus, because I do have a wildly inappropriate sense of humor sometimes. So if you're 17 and under, just don't buy my book. It's still gonna be there when you turn 18, waiting for you, and I don't want your parents to get mad at me and come after me, so please don't do it. Wait till you're 18 and then buy it with impunity. It's like $3, so it's basically the same thing as getting to buy me a coffee, but with like way more crazy illustrations and stick figures and stuff like that at the same time. And if you're under 18, don't worry, just hang with me here. That's exactly what this is for, and we're gonna cover all the same topics because there's no reason that you aren't ready to learn the same information, just in a, PC, family-friendly kind of way. Plus, you're gonna get to watch me embarrass myself on camera, so hang on for that. Second of all, videos that I've written scripts for as of this writing have gotten about 5.2 million views on YouTube. I'm sure most of you know me from the Minecraft roleplays I used to do for Newscape Pro's channel, but in case you didn't know, I was Osana Najimi Genka Kunahito, among others. Now, obviously, that's a channel that already has a huge following, but I'm going to take you through the same process of mapping out and writing your own stories that I use there. Let me give you a couple of reasons as to why I'm doing this. I have 2 higher education degrees, a Master of Fine Arts in Screenwriting from UCLA's world-renowned program, and a Bachelor of Arts of Human Ecology in College of the Atlantic, slightly less well-known, more crunchy hippies, but, between both of those schools, I'm $250,000 in student loan debt. And I really don't think that anybody should have to go that far into debt just to learn some simple things as far as constructing a story is concerned. Not everyone's as lucky as me to get scholarships and, grants and loans and all of that to be able to go to school. So even if you don't have the money to be able to buy books and lessons and stuff like that, you should still have access to the same information. So that's thing number 1. I love stories, and I love reading or playing or watching really good ones. So if any of you go on to write Game of the Year or a bestseller or anything like that, I'll consider this to be incredibly worthwhile from my part. Even if you don't, it's still gonna be incredibly worthwhile for my part because you're staring at my weird face listening to me as I'm telling you how to build stories. So that's pretty cool. Hopefully you're gonna be willing to put up with a few abs. Maybe we can make this a kind of a symbiotic relationship. You watch, I give you information, Dad pays for it, everybody is a happy, dappy camper. I don't know what dappy means, but we're all gonna be happy dappy together. So I will teach you about the actual practice of writing, but mostly I'm gonna focus on 2 basic things. Number 1 is the narrative structure, or the shape that your story takes. I'm going to focus on what I call the Hollywood monomyth, which is the single big pattern that most every big Hollywood movie follows, hitting certain tentpoles or structural big moments along the way at very specific times. The other thing I'm going to teach you about is symbolic hierarchies, and that's what various symbols mean and how you can use them to your advantage. For example, if you're from a Western culture, you probably associate the color white with purity and innocence, whereas if you're from an Eastern culture, you're much more likely to associate the color white with death or mourning. So with symbols, it's not just what you say, but how you say it. The context that you're actually creating by using various symbols in sort of constellations with each other. There's also a dark and terrible secret that runs through Western storytelling culture, but I'm not going to get to that just yet. Mostly because you don't have context for it, so it's going to just sound like a whole bunch of random nonsense. So we're going to build up a vocabulary first and then come around to that stuff later on. Not too much later, just like a little bit later, like a minute later, just not later. So enough drawing, to the lessons! So the place that we really have to start is with 3. With 1 point, you just kind of have a static point. It just kind of sits there like a not really doing much, right? With 2 points, you get a line segment. but it's really the articulation of something going from one point to another, just a boring, uninterrupted trip. Things go as expected. And we don't want to see something that's boring or predictable, at least not entirely, because why should an audience choose that story over hundreds of other ones that are out there calling for their attention? So for that, we need 3 points, which is actually the most minimal way to describe an arc that I can think of. Something was going off in one direction, it changes and then heads off another way altogether. A story then is the articulation of change. And it's important to remember that every step of the way, because once you start pushing plots and characters around, things get complicated really quickly. And you can forget that at the end of the day, every pop culture story comes back to this: 3 points, beginning, middle, and end. That's it. If you're not new to story structure, you've probably heard of Joseph Campbell, who is an old dead white guy, but admittedly a very cool and kind of chill old dead white guy. And he had a lot of interesting things to say on the subject of mythology. Campbell was in his 20s during the Great Depression, and he basically locked himself away in a cabin off in the woods and divided his day into sections of reading, and in so doing, basically turned himself into a human Wikipedia, way before there was anything like that. So when I'm talking about a monomyth, or one single story structure that underlies all stories, I'm actually using Joseph Campbell's language. The monomyth that Campbell identified was, of course, from a very different time as far as human development was concerned. So nowadays, we need a different monomyth that's a little bit more in keeping with the evolution that stories have undergone in the past, especially 100 years. In narrative engineering, I lay out the structure for Deadpool, The Hunger Games, Kingsman: The Secret Service, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and a lot more. So I'm gonna do that here too. And more than just analyzing other stories, I'm going to show you how to practically build a story. So we're going to do that together, and then you guys can kind of do with it whatever you want. Campbell called these 3 story phases that we know as beginning, middle, and end as separation, initiation, and return, following the paths of ancient rituals. A youth was taken from the culture of their childhood, brought out to somewhere in the wilderness, usually taught some kind of sacred wisdom, and then returned to their culture as an adult, now bearing that wisdom and being able to contribute more completely to their adult society. So while each story has this structure of beginning, middle, and end, or separation, initiation, return, the change itself that we're talking about is what makes each of them different. In telling these kinds of stories, you're saying that given this context and these characters, this is the change that occurs. And not just the change that happens, but the change that has to happen. Animals don't like change. Change is bad for us. A couple of degrees and we're completely toast. And not in the I am bread toast, like kind of Markiplier, fun way, but like toast. The tiniest change in our environment, and suddenly we're gone like the dodo. And yes, I use the example of the dodo because it is a funny sounding name and therefore makes the whole prospect of impending doom a little bit easier to stomach. Yeah. Dodo. You can't know how to change to prepare for something that you can't predict or don't know that is coming. And that's what the world is when you get right down to it. We're a highly adaptive species, meaning we can change quickly. And storytelling is one of the reasons why. It's a tool, a method of transmitting experiential wisdom. That is, like wisdom that's born of experience. So, experiential wisdom. And that way, you don't even have to risk anything in order to gain the knowledge needed. If you tell me a story about why fire is hot and can burn me, or why fire is hot and can keep me warm, I can learn from those things and learn to, not burn my house down while I'm trying to keep warm, or not burn myself while I'm trying to cook my dinner. At least, hopefully. So again, stories aren't just stories. Even as I'm talking right now, whether you're listening to my voice and understanding me or reading captions and understanding it that way, our brains are in sync through something that's called neural coupling. Through time and space and all the mighty tubes of the internet, your brain and mine are intertwined. And that kinda sorta rhymed. But how cool is that, right? It's like, my brain is a TARDIS, and your brain is another TARDIS that, like, kind of two of those trees that, like, grew up together, that it's like that. Yeah, basically. So when you tell your own stories, remember, you are literally getting into somebody else's head to teach them about change. There's a really great TED Talk about this, and you should totally check it out. And just so you know, I will come back to the subject a lot more in the future. So let's get back to the 3 points here that form a story and the narrative thread that they form together. Kind of looks like Ron Weasley's broken wand, doesn't it? Just like a little bit. Is it just me? Anyone? Just me?
I didn't say anything, you said something. Shut up. Jeez.
It's important to remember that monomythic stories have one protagonist or foremost actor, somebody that we think of as the central character. This is the person around whom everything else aligns. Different writing teachers will talk about building your story from plot, versus building your story from character. But the truth is, it really doesn't matter. In the end, they have to dovetail and support each other. It has to be the right protagonist and the right story, because again, they have to be talking about that one change that unites them. So if you're writing a story the right way, neural coupling is going to help you create this transcendent, alternate reality style experience for your audience. It's basically like you're showing them a new program in the Matrix. There are 2 cats. I think there were always 2 cats, but I'm not sure. There might be a glitch in the Matrix. Is it a glitch if they're different colors? 1 character, 1 change. More than that, and you risk losing the audience's attention. It just kind of diffuses out through the different storylines that you're building. Your story loses focus, and so does your audience.
I don't know why I didn't like it. I just didn't like it, okay?
So these 2 different legs that connect the 3 points of the story are themselves different narrative components. The first one is what we call the false goal. This is when the protagonist is following the thing that they really want. Luke Skywalker wanted to fight for the rebellion. Katniss Everdeen wanted to survive the Hunger Games for the sake of her younger sister Prim. Deadpool wanted to get his pretty good looks back. The other leg of this narrative journey is what we call the true goal, or the thing that the protagonist actually needs, even if they don't realize it when they start out on their journey. Luke Skywalker needed to embrace the Force. Katniss Everdeen needed to save Peeta Mellark. Mellark? Oh, Mellark? Red Boy. She had to save Red Boy from the Hunger Games. Yeah. That happened. And Deadpool needed to reconcile with Vanessa because it was a love story. Dressed up in the tight, shiny spandex of Ryan Reynolds, but yes, it was a love story. Or Dopinder. Kya kar rahe ho, bro? Ye Mr. Pool Guy sabse pagal hai. Bag ho. Drive or whatever. Crazy man. It's no mistake that heroes are usually rule breakers. They risk adversity to gain the sacred wisdom that comes from undertaking the journey in the first place. And they learn something about themselves and something that can help their home community in the process. So the change itself that they're actually undergoing is in fact a quality or a virtue that's internal to them, because characteristics are all about context. Let's count down the 7 deadly sins, shall we? I'm so going to hell for this.
What?
I'm just kidding. Pride. Confidence is king. People need more of it. That's all I have to say about that. Envy. Not usually a positive thing, but at the same time, if you recognize that you want something, you can possibly do something about it. I mean, maybe your neighbor doesn't want the thing you're envying, or like maybe it's a grill or something and they just like really don't like grilling anymore. But you have like, I don't know, a badminton net and they really, really like badminton, and then you can exchange something. So bartering for the win, but you wouldn't have known that if you didn't envy something in the first place. Wrath. Well, sometimes things are worthy of anger. Stories that sympathize with white supremacists, for example, like Birth of a Nation, one of the very first big, huge movies to ever be shown, was wildly, wildly racist. And that should make us angry. Just because stories are more subtle about it nowadays doesn't mean that that kind of stuff is gone anywhere. And it's okay to be pissed about things like some people thinking it's okay to treat others as less than equal. Sloth. Well, sometimes it can just be nice to hang out with people, which I think would be considered rather sloth-like. One of my parents was anti-video games for a really long time, so it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I actually understood how much fun it could be just to hang around with friends and do some constructive activity like that. I always thought of it as a giant waste of time, and I missed out on so much. I'm sure it's the same way with you. We all know we have to just kind of chillax sometimes.
Did I just say chillax? Is it like chilling with an axe? That doesn't sound like fun.
Agreed. There's nothing inherently wrong with liking nice things. I asked my husband to make me a pink sparkly sword, and you know what? Pink sparkly sword! Pink sparkly sword! Pink sparkly sword! Do you know how happy that pink glittery sword makes me? Many happies. Many, many, many happies. Gluttony. Well, if you don't eat, you die. So that's kind of self-explanatory. I mean, hopefully you're eating multiple times a day, because that's what humans are good at. So yeah. Obviously to excess, well, anything to excess is not good, but still. Now I just want to make you some nice lunch. Fill up your tum-tum. And finally, lust. Well, where do you think humans come from, you nitwits? Life is not about absolutes. Stories are what give us the context to say that yes, this value is appropriate given this time and circumstances, versus no, this one isn't appropriate and maybe we should just kind of chuck it in the bin. That's a problem with both legal systems and religions. They're sometimes set in stone, and they don't allow for exceptions. And sometimes there are a lot of exceptions. Sometimes everyone's an exception.
Maybe it's just the rule that's stupid.
For example, there's one big bad story that's been running around for a couple thousand years ago saying that being gay is wrong. If being gay is wrong, I don't ever want to be right. I will worship the high priestess Mama Ru, and I will be fierce until the end of my days. So there. Yeah, take that. At the end of the day, we rely on stories to teach us the adaptive version, the real world version of what's right and what's wrong, teaching us to accept the new and do away with the old before it poisons us to death like a giant thought chamber. And yes, I did say chamber. Just kidding, I said thought. And this change, the substitution of a new vital value for an outdated one, is the core of your story. It's its premise. Your first step to being a heckin' good storyteller is knowing what you're trying to say here. Trust overcomes resentment. Acceptance is healthier than repression. And love can overcome hate. It can outshine it like the sun. Your premise is like the emotional version of a mathematical proof. If these are the circumstances, if this is the character, then this is the change that's needed. It's hard to nail down exactly what quality you're talking about excising and what new quality you're talking about introducing, but the more particular that you can make them, the more that you can reintroduce that to every aspect of your story. You can make it so that the world is basically crying out to your viewers or audience or whoever, saying, listen to me, this is the way to go. And it's based on this lived experience that you present in a story. As any kind of storyteller, people are out there waiting to listen to you. Their voice is crying out in darkness, seeking answers. You can help provide that. You can help them find what they're looking for. How many times has your life fallen apart and a story saved you? 2007, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. 2010, Doctor Who. 2013, Invisible Monsters. And 2016, Overwatch. So to recap, all stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Think of your premise, the core of your story, as the thing around which everything else revolves. It's an emotional version of a proof. You're proving something to your audience, and you're getting into their own heads to do it. At the end of the day, most of the best stories, especially the Hollywood ones, are talking about that substitution of one value for another. How to change, how to grow, how to survive when presented with adversity. And finally, the world needs your stories to save it. How many times have you been like, I can fix this broken thing or this slightly damaged thing if someone would just listen to me? Well, you're probably right, and I'm gonna teach you the language to help you make that point known. So that's all for now, but check in with me next time because we're gonna start breaking down the Hollywood monomyth. We're gonna get into it, I'm gonna explain every single step along the way, and we're gonna build a template for stories to teach you exactly how it should go if you wanna follow this particular structure. We're gonna be looking at examples of stories that do really well or really badly, and if you have an idea of a story that you'd really like to see me break down once we get rolling here, leave it in the comments, let me know. I always love to hear suggestions. Right now, I'm also writing a story on Wattpad called Nix, and I'm releasing updates for that about 3 times a week, so check in there if you want to see this kind of thing unfolding in novel form. And don't forget, if you like this video and you don't want to miss out on any of my weirdness, like, subscribe, tap the bell thingy, something about tapping a bell. Graham Bain is too old to understand this kind of stuff, but just tap the bell, kiddos, if you like it and you want to see the and the more in the stories. I'm posting a tentative schedule down below and link to my Twitter, on which I also do fun things, usually involving cats, because I have cats and they are small and furry. And in a hurry, usually. You might have seen them walking around over there. So let's build a community together and come join the fun. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Bye!